So, Ms. Brandley, I think that you're going to get the privilege of being number one in terms of any check-in statement phrase that you would like to share with us this morning.
Well, at this point, Mr. Amawale, everybody in my family is good. Everybody in my family has already voted. So all of our votes actually are being counted. And I just wanted to make sure that everyone else get out to vote and continue to spread the word. We have 3 more days to actually vote. It's really important for everyone to vote. No matter who they vote for, it's just important for everyone to vote.
Wow, that's the message. Yes. Okay. James Lee.
Yes, sir.
Any opening phrase?
Only thing I got to say to everybody is that the awareness of this virus is at a heightened level, and exercise all the precautions that you can and be safe.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Thank you. Rem Johnson.
I'm like Miss Brantley. Everybody in my family has voted already. And the thing that I would like to say is if you committed a crime during the 1990s and wound up going to jail behind the laws that were in place, don't blame Joe Biden.
Okay. Okay, yeah. Well, thank you, my brother. And we might work with that at some later point. I like that. Angela Carter.
Yeah, good morning again, everybody. It is certainly time to defend our, it's certainly time to defend our democracy.
Thank you.
We're in a meeting.
Ms. Aguirre?
Just ditto everything that's been said.
Okay, wonderful. And I don't have anything further to add. Folk through our outreach, we were very fortunate to get in touch with some other of our contemporaries, our colleagues who are mobilizing their machinery to keep democracy from going dark. And to that end, with this coalition, this wider coalition, and I think it was represented by Bob Henson on the telephone last week, last time that we gathered, we got an idea of what was being done to, on a local scale, to take action for the crisis that we might be heading into in a couple of days. So in the meanwhile, we've had 2 light bearers, points of light, to kind of take the lead in communicating with this coalition and making sure that it, for a more perfect union was reflected. And they are equipped to give us a report on the type of consensus talking points that we have that have been agreed upon. And so at this time, I'm going to yield to Sherra and Angela, and they can tell us everything from who's involved to what actions are going to be taking place according to the best of what it is that they know. So Sherra and Angela, you all have the floor.
Mr. Amawale, before they have the floor, do we want to get feedback from Wendy?
Yeah, please. Hey, Wendy, I didn't know that you had come in.
I just came in.
How's Fred?
He's good, thank you. And Jimmy,
yeah.
Too? Good.
And so, Wendy, are you at liberty as we approach the end, after we get through with the electioneering and the political discussion, to talk to us a little bit about the project, the Low Turn Row?
Sure, yeah.
Okay, all right. Well, we'll do that at the very end. Ms. Brandon, please give us a reminder. So Angela and Sherra, please take us away.
Okay, I'll start. I I was very fortunate to have had the opportunity to attend two of the meetings of the coalition that Omawale has just described, and on October 20th and October 27th. And this was a very diverse group of um, organizations locally and nationally. Just an example of who was involved was the organizations Move On, First Unitarian Universalist Church, Sunrise, Houston Climate Strike, Women's March organizers, Indivisible, the AFL-CIO, and many others. There were 22 participants on the initial call, and their organizing is completely focused on defending our democracy and counting every vote in such a way that they are designing an opportunity for Houston citizens to mobilize, come together in a vigil or march starting November 4th as the votes are counted and as election results are revealed.
Okay. All right. Yeah, thank you so much, Angela. Sherra, is there anything that you would add to that?
Angela, I believe you sent out also a press release given the time and place.
Yes.
You want to share that?
Yes. The press release is scheduled tentatively, I believe, for 10 a.m., I believe, on November 4th. And then the march itself is scheduled to start at 5 o'clock on November 4th at the Eleanor Tinsley Park.
And where will they march, Angela?
And this is a great question, and I believe there will be an opportunity as soon as tomorrow to get some of the final details of the action. But they are intending to start, I believe, as a vigil. So I don't know that they will actually initiate the march on November 4th, but they could decide to do that. I think those final details are still being determined. Sherra, do you agree or disagree with that? Did you get more?
No, I definitely agree. I think the main focus is a gathering at Eleanor Tinsley with speakers and, pro-democracy speakers. A lot of emphasis on, peaceful demonstration. I was very impressed with the organizational aspect of what they've done. They've really done some good planning. You can tell that there are people who have experience in organizing this kind of demonstration. So we hope for the best. They're going to have Marshall communication, kind of a little communication system where people will be, scanning the crowds, trying to make sure that there's nothing ominous, developing. They are aware that there may be elements there that are really not in concert, with what the pro-democracy stand. And so they seem to be pretty well organized, but they need help. And I think that that may be something, Angela, we may want to talk a little bit about.
Sure.
They've got teams organized and I don't have my notes handy. I don't know if you do, Angela, but there's several teams and several different ways to get involved. And their approach is there's a role for anyone. Not everybody will be able to physically attend, but there is virtual support that they're asking for. I'm looking for my notes here. There is support of outreach that they're looking for. They need people to volunteer as marshals. They want to have, they have a group of marshals, and actually there's a marshal training this week, but I think they're going to put out another one prior to the 4th. But these are people that will just probably have walkie-talkies. They'll be positioned in different places, just making sure everybody is safe. And that if there's any information that needs to go out, there's a way to get it out so that, you know, that situations don't arise where rumors start to dictate what's happening rather than the leadership. So were there any other teams, Angela, that you recall that they're looking for help?
I think there were logistics teams, jail and legal, an art team, and communications. In addition to those, Sherra, that you would mention.
Right. And we, you know, we kind of discussed, Angela and Omawale and I, some of the things on the outreach side, and churches, because again, there are churches involved already in this coalition that want to get involved. Again, as Angela said, legal support, jail and legal support, they're looking for that. And we mentioned organizations even like the NAACP that we may want to outreach to. So the outreach, the idea, as I understand it, behind the outreach is to have as broad a number of different groups from different aspects of the community aware of what's happening so they understand why this is happening. And they are in a position to lend a voice of support if they so choose.
Right.
Right.
So they're looking for organizations like ours to spread the word and ask for volunteers.
Yeah.
Cassie, is what you posted a PDF that you could email to us, or Sherry or Angela? I can send it out to a number of people.
Yes, I'll email it right now, Wendy.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And would you also like, Wendy, for us to email that list of volunteer opportunities?
Oh, yes, that'll be, yes.
Right.
Yeah.
And I can, Angela, I don't know, either you or I could probably do that during the call here.
Okay. Sure.
So that Ms. Brantley could post it.
Okay. Great. That would be wonderful. I don't know if this group is aware of an organization that started in September to evaluate and analyze all the different ways the administration could subvert the laws in terms of the election and post-election. It's called keepourrepublic.com. It's Keep Our Republic. And it's, there were 16 former senators and public officials that have put this together, and they've been going around the country. I will send you all some material from them. But they've been going all around the country, and particularly universities, to do seminars and open public panels on the problems that they anticipate, and also questions of civic responsibility generally. And I think they will continue probably for quite a bit after the election. It might be just, they should know about you, and it might be interesting for you to know what they're doing. I wouldn't call it a grassroots effort, obviously, but there are people that are very open and have been involved in social justice issues on many fronts for a long time.
Wonderful.
That's great.
Thank you, Ms. Arthur, for joining us.
Omawale, do you want to have any discussion about what people have heard, or do you want to talk about the kind of consensus points that we wanted to put out for discussion?
Yeah, I definitely want to talk about the consensus points. Let me add that it seems like that new responsibilities are being thrust upon us. And Um, what I did is, after conferring with Angela and Sherra, I took the liberty to get in touch with Bob Henson and indicate to him that if he wanted the support, or the group wanted the support of law enforcement to look for rogue elements and to make sure that that was not a you would try to reduce the harm that could be done by rogue elements. They did have a discussion about the request to have HPD formally engaged to help with the rogue elements, and so they declined on the basis that they thought that they didn't have 100% assurance that the police would be the right factor to have involved in a nonviolent demonstration. And so we respected what it is that their view of that. But I wanted to mention that in terms of going forward, that we've got to, especially when you have so many young people involved, and this is their first exposure, or maybe this is kind of like a first or second exposure to these kinds of demonstrations. Um, we've at least got to have the discussion of where our allies are, our assets are, and how to use all of our assets. And so that was my attempt with Bob Henson. But if they want to reopen, if they would like to revisit having a former contact with law enforcement, that can be done.
Okay.
Okay.
You know, just on the point of the diversity of that group, and it wasn't just a diverse group of organizations from different aspects of social justice, et cetera, but there was great age diversity. And I mentioned to Omawale, and Angela and I talked about it too. There were so many young people on the call, and those are the folks that really touched my heart, to see how enthusiastic they were. And also, many of them had been, a lot of them were from Sunrise and climate change organizations, to see how organized they had been in previous efforts on their specific topics of interest. And we're talking about, even there was even one young lady that was in high school that was very instrumental, particularly on coming up with ideas on how to, since everybody, that one of the issues was the marshal training that took place last Thursday, and they were still recruiting marshals. So she came up with, she offered to develop a packet, a training kit. This is a high school student, for the marshals, taking the information that was being given in the in-person training and putting that in a kit where, you know, they could actually go through the same information. One young lady who looked to be in her 20s or so with the Sunrise Movement was going to go back to her organization to get funding for things like porta potties and things like this. So to see young people stepping up in the way that they are is really hopeful. And I think what folks like ourselves can do, because I describe myself on the call as a fossil from the 60s, you know, because I think what we can do is to help lend, you know, advice and experience. And I think that's what Omawale was trying to do with the contacts with the police department. But again, we have to respect, you know, how they want to handle that.
Yeah.
And there's two sides to that question, so I understand their position as well.
Well, let me say, going forward, my communications with Bob and some of the other organizers, I won't tell them that, frankly, I think that they're making a mistake, but I think it's an error I'm gonna use the word error, because if you look at what happened in Kenosha, where you have these militias that show up with high-powered weapons.
Yeah.
No civilian in the main coming to a demonstration is going to have a high-powered weapon. Now, I read a report that one of the stops that Kamala Harris, that she wanted to make on her trip out to El Paso, one of the stops had to be canceled because there were militia groups with weapons who were also approaching that spot at the same time. So they had to cancel Kamala going to that spot. And I can't say if somebody had ill intention. It's just the fact that, you know, again, a single spark can start a prairie fire. I think that with all of the young people who will be participating on the night of November 3rd, that they deserve the fullest degree of protection from these bullies and these rogue elements as possible. But anyway, like I told Bob, if he wants to revisit that, and secondly, because Governor Abbott has already activated the National Guard in several localities and probably will do so for Houston too, the city leaders, they've already have met on how they will deal with a rapidly escalating situation where a lot of crazies get involved. So in other words, that's going to be a plan to contain disruption, whether or not our coalition group meets with them or not. But let me also mention is that, no, I'll mention that later on. So the second thing is that Sherra was mentioned that we wanted to go through the talking points or the consensus points about, because if we develop an outreach plan, we're going to have to be on the same page in terms of our talking points. And so I think the Sherra and Angela have 3 talking points that are going to be central to what it is that we talk to people about.
Yes, Ms. Bradley, can you put those back on the screen?
Sure.
Okay, so these are just some, again, talking points, as Omowale said, that we wanted to discuss with you to first make sure that we're all on the same page with how we see our actions over the next period of time from the election all the way through inauguration, hopefully in 2021 and then beyond. And these will be the talking points, whatever we come up with, however we change it or whatever we come up with, would be what we would say to people when we talk to them about supporting this coalition that we are part of. So basically you can see them on the screen. We wanted to keep it, you know, short and simple, but clear. And so the first one is protect democracy and our children's future. Count every vote. I think that's needs no explanation. The second one is stand and defend democracy through action until there is a just and peaceful transition in January 2021. There's a responsibility and role for everybody. The third one is continue the nonviolent defense of democracy after the inauguration. Divisions will not heal quickly.
You don't get to be.
And anti-democratic forces will not immediately disappear regardless of the election outcome. So that's what we wanted to get feedback here to see how we need to tweak this, or if you like this or you think it should be something different. I'll give it back to Omowale to lead that discussion. Angela, was there anything, I know we went through this, but anything you would like to add?
No, I think that captured it.
Yeah. The only thing that I want woven into that document is that, and I don't know if it needs to be explicit or just implicit in the document, is the fact that we believe that it's more important to have free and fair elections than to have your candidate to win.
Would you like to put that in that first point, since we're talking about?
I tell you what, I don't want to be too verbose and have too much stuff there. But if somebody has an idea how we might incorporate that without, you know, having too much verbiage, I certainly will appreciate that. You see, because for a democracy, even if it's in 2050, that principle is going to stand about the importance of fair and free elections. And I think that especially in terms of the Black community, in terms of our history, and maybe women will feel the same way, or many women will feel the same way, but in terms of the Black community's history, I think that there will be a strong gravitation toward that point. So Sherra, maybe we can figure out how to work that in, maybe with number 1.
Yeah, I was just thinking maybe it's as simple as saying count every vote for a free and fair election.
Yes.
Does that do it?
Yes. Yeah, I think that does it. So I'm writing that down. No, that's good. I'm glad the way that you summed that up with. Mm-hmm. So Ms. Arthur, glad to have you on the call. Is there any feedback on what we have here as these 3 talking points?
I'm in agreement with it. You're good. How are you doing today?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's very well stated.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. One of the things that I'm hoping for, let's say, for example, is that we try to engage the Black Methodists for Church Renewal, which is a coalition of Black Methodist churches. I think that, for example, when we say protect our children's future, I think that that's kind of a common denominator that nobody can push back against. So when you say protect our children's future, all layers are all sections of organization in the church, from men to women to the voluntary groups, to the auxiliaries, the pastor. When you start talking about protecting our children's future, everybody will come on. So when we develop, if we decide to develop an outreach strategy, we'll at least have a talking point that we can speak to them on. If we talking to them on the telephone, or we talking to them across the table, or we doing a Zoom call. So no, I think that we might have done ourselves well in terms of these talking point. And as mothers and grandparents, I think if they resonate with mothers and fathers and grandparents, we have a pretty good idea as to how they might work. Does anybody have any comment, observation? Okay, well, look, I want to thank you all for, and I thank Sherra and Angela for the work that they did. Now, we're going to be together again Tuesday at noon on excuse me. That's supposed to be Wednesday at 12 noon. So that's supposed to be Wednesday. We're going to be together Wednesday at 12 noon. And what we're going to be doing is trying to take an assessment as to what comes next, because if we are going to have to be in a rapidly escalating campaign to build popular support for what it is that we want to do, we're going to have to start thinking about where our assets are, where our allies are, and how we might begin to get them involved. You never can tell. It might be that we're going to need legal defense money, you know, in terms of people who might have been locked up and they need money for bail, lawyers, or what. We don't know what it is that we're going to need, but we're going to make that assessment on Wednesday, November the 4th. But that's also going to be more or less we run things through a prism of how it is that we can get the entire community. And I want to put an emphasis on entire. How is it that we can get the entire community involved in this in some shape, form, or fashion? That widespread mobilization, alliance building, and organizing nonviolent action, because there are a lot of nonviolent actions that does not involve, you know, going down to the federal building or going down the Eleanor Tinsley Park. So I just want to ask people, do you understand what's your understanding of where we are? Do you all agree that on November the 4th, that's going to determine what's going to be necessary to make this a popular fight, or more of a popular fight?
I agree.
Okay, yeah, okay. So I guess I wanted to hear, Ms. Brandon, what do you think?
Oh, I'm in agreement for November 4th. I'm in the process of sitting out the meeting invite right now.
Okay, all right then, well, very good then. So if we get some feedback on this local visual and demonstration, if we get some feedback on that from Bob or somebody else, and I'll probably be talking to Bob this afternoon. I hope I will be. I might be calling you all individually, or we might have to do something collectively in an emergency mode before Wednesday, the 12th. If I may add, just as a sidebar on this, as an amateur political scientist, I know all of us are becoming amateur political scientists. I know we're probably going to be amateur weathermen before it's over too with this climate change. But on the political science front, it appears that it could be a scenario before 6 a.m. on November 4th, based upon the vote totals that are counted in Florida and North Carolina, that if he loses Florida, there's no path for him to win the election, assuming that Joe Biden holds the Hillary Clinton states. There's absolutely no path once the Florida's 29 electoral votes are out. Now, if you get North Carolina, you get Pennsylvania, or you get Florida plus Wisconsin, or Florida plus Pennsylvania's lights out. The game is over, and some of the suspense that we're dealing with will have deflated just a little bit, but we can expect there to be some widespread challenges legally, etc. But the nightmare scenario that many people have been anticipating will not be will be averted. I understand that Walmart is going to begin selling guns again today. They had suspended selling guns, but in the face of some
Commercialism.
attacks, they're going to restart today.
I'm sorry.
Because
In the face of commercialism, they decided to sell them. No, I'm sorry.
That's right.
it's been 4 years.
Somebody to finance it. Y'all crazy?
Right.
Well, I tell you what, you folk are so cynical.
I know we are.
Yeah, but
let me say this, man. Can I say this?
Yes, sir.
Why would you start back to selling guns after you decided 4 years ago that you would not?
Exactly.
Well, let's find out this, Mr. Johnson.
Ma'am?
Why would they even want to sell the guns there when they had so many different shootings in Walmart, which makes no sense to me?
Well, you know, maybe I'm more cynical than most of you all. But my view is that they're just trying to make guns more available.
Available.
To
Absolutely.
To the right wing anarchists, if you want to call them that. And I don't want to offend anybody, but, you know, the big belly militias.
Truth.
You know you're wrong. You know you're wrong.
I don't care about being wrong.
But the truth is the truth.
Yeah, this is a special moment in history. There's no doubt about it. But again, especially in behalf of the young people, we want the people, certainly in Harris County, we want the people that command the institutions that can make a difference. We want them to do their job. And in other words, we don't want a Kenosha in Houston. And that's what I have been saying to my law enforcement friends. We don't want a Kenosha in Houston, Texas. And hopefully they have gotten the message. So folk, I guess since 2012, that was a project that was started here locally to build trust between police and community, primarily young people. So we've been having some, I won't say in some cases, some fairly intensive contact with police officers about restoring the trust that has been broken in the community. And some of those police officers, I can tell you right now, is that they feel just like we feel about rogue law enforcement. And I'm trying to say that they are not enemies, that they are friends. But most people don't know policemen. They just know what they see in the headline. So anyway, I wanted to just share that with you so that there is a cause for suspicion, but I think that the police, certainly here in this community, they're going to hold in behalf of the people.
Can I point out something that happened this morning?
Yes, sir.
A female police officer shot a young man.
Where was this?
Southwest Houston somewhere. After a short chase. And the amazing thing about it is, she didn't kill him. She shot him in the leg. I don't know if anybody can grasp that, but here we have a woman.
I can.
Yeah, here we have a woman who is part of law enforcement. She was a sergeant, you know, and I imagine, I'm pretty sure she could have killed the guy, but she shot him in the leg. And being a relative marksman myself, I don't understand why that couldn't have always been the outcome. I mean, you know, you standing close enough to somebody to shoot him in the chest, you standing close enough to him to shoot him in the leg without killing him. So I just wanted to point that out.
Okay, thank you, Johnson.
Maybe the other cop saw that, I guess is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Hope so.
Yeah. Well, we'll see what's happening, because it's what's happening among police officers right now is a very fluid and dynamic circumstances are taking place in terms of communication between the command staff and their rank and file officers. They are actually, in many cases, trying to minimize contact with the community. Now, we just wrote a proclamation for the Sergeant Preston who went out to a domestic abuse call, and he was killed answering a domestic abuse call. He was a 41-year veteran. And we wanted the police to know that it was a blue life that fell in the line of duty trying to protect citizens. Is that we wanted that family to know that we feel their pain. And I can guarantee you that the vast majority of policemen, that they're going to follow their commanders as far as possible. They're going to try to protect these demonstrators at Eleanor Tinsley Park. So I'm saying you have a lot of friends that are going to be trying to protect them at Eleanor Tinsley Park. Well, look, folks, that's all I have on that. Claire, how you doing? I can't hear you. You muted.
Sorry for being late, but I've enjoyed this discussion.
Yes, ma'am. How's your husband doing?
We're gonna have another procedure unexpectedly Tuesday, but it's gonna be okay. We'll be at St. Joseph at 6 a.m., but it's gonna be okay.
We'll be praying.
Well, you can get all the moral encouragement that you need from us. And so a lot of times I know you've been very dignified and very strong, but I know that a lot of times having some of the things that you revealed to me, I know sometimes it feels like Sisyphus pushing that rock up the hill and it comes back down right when you get to the top. But my sister, stay strong and continue to fight. I think you got better days.
My belief, he does give us things that we can't handle, but he never gives, but it's nothing that he can't handle.
I love it. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, you're in your second incarnation as an evangelist.
No. No,
Okay.
but it has been a time, you know, for my family personally. This has been quite a bit these last 7 months.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
From one diagnosis to the next.
Yes, I understand. I understand. God bless you. God be with you, your husband.
Good luck.
We got it. We don't need luck. We blessed. Dee, you can say anything you want. I totally agree with what you said.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Okay. Okay. And Charlotte, one of the people that's going to commune with us on your presentation, at least trying to get a feel for the, I guess the wisest way or the most sagacious way to present your presentation. I'm going to also be talking to Claire, because she is kind of been involved at some of the highest levels of the Catholic social justice philosophy and teaching. So I'm just letting you know we will be talking to Claire about that.
Okay.
I don't have anything else, folks. What I'm going to do is that I'm going to take the initiative and start working out a outreach plan from what it is that I know of the community here. And I'm talking about from a multicultural sense. I'm going to start working some things out about assets. And I'd like for everybody else to start thinking about assets that we can approach. I know as a template for nonviolent action that Bob Henson, and they use a book by Gene Sharp called Nonviolence. I think it's in 3 volumes, but anyway, they have every nonviolent technique in that book by Gene Sharp that you can think of. And I know that they use that as a kind of a guide to start recommending things to the public. So I tell you what, people, we pretty much at the end of the road. Wendy, tell us a little bit about what I think is a groundbreaking effort that you and Fred were involved with the low turn row.
Okay, thank you. At the moment, I'm working with 3 teachers on a high school curriculum that's multidisciplinary, using film, photography, and blues music in particular, to talk about race issues and constitutional issues and civic responsibility. And this comes out of a film that Fred and I did in 2018 that was at the Houston Cinema Arts. It was at that point a work in progress. And it was about the first part of what ended up being a 10-year exploration of US American history, actually in Texas, although neither he nor I are from Texas, which we called an American microcosm. And we stayed focused on Texas in a sense for 2 reasons. One, that Texas was part of the US mythology of itself, white, male, and strong. And the other thing is that the vectors of cultural settlement in Texas, this was in the 70s, were still very visible in relation to the land, communities, the political and social life of different parts of the state. So we stayed and lived with people in what was then called the Senegambia area, the old corn and cotton southern frontier in Texas, was stretched from Jefferson in the northeast through Wharton and Fort Bend counties, and of course Galveston, which in our early history, not only did cotton was the basis for Texas wealth, but Galveston was almost the biggest port for the export of cotton in the United States. Then we went to the German Hill Country, and then the border area, southeast and southwest. Southwest is still very cattle oriented, and the southeast, as you know, the Rio Grande Valley has had a very complex history in relation to settlement from Spanish to Mexican, and now largely Central American, from either the countries south in the United States. So when we were in Grimes County, was the center point of our work in East Texas, and we lived East Central Texas, beyond the piney woods, because the land in the piney woods is not good for cotton. But Texas had some of the best river bottom land in the country at a time when the old Tidewater South land had begun to already extenuate itself. So there was a very large movement of planters and slaves from the Tidewater South, and then places like Alabama and Mississippi. So you had a very, very strong plantation, cotton, and slave history in this state, which is probably many, and Houston, a lot of the population from Houston came out of that area, particularly the beginning of World War II, when jobs opened up here. And Acres Home was, for example, a central destination for many Blacks from Grimes County. Anyway, it was partly serendipitous. We were trying to essentially, in the first day, figured out where we were going to stay. Had a camper in a car. Anyway, we ended up in the back pasture of an extended African American family's ranch, and they had been able to maintain that land, little over 200 acres, because their grandfather actually had gone to the courthouse, which, as you know, was a place where most Blacks tried to avoid, if anything possible, for many, many years, and made a will. So the family had been able to maintain that land. And so we stayed there, and for over 3 or 4 years did a documentation. We're photographers and journalists, so photography, oral history, historical research, and political research in a lot of the archives. So I guess it was in 2018, 30 years later, actually 40 years later, that we were asked to do a film about that part of the work, the old Southern corn and cotton part of Texas. So we did, with a largely actually tended to be Black American crew, an incredible cinematographer from Los Angeles, actually, Johnny Simmons. And we did the beginning of the work, and we showed it in 2018. The low turn row term, which Wally had asked me about, is a term that comes up in blues music. It was in one of the songs of Lightning Hopkins and in several songs that Mance Lipscomb used to sing. And the low turn row film, as you know, most cotton pickers went down a row, circled around, and went back again. And when you hit the low turn row was not only one of the most difficult rows usually because it was on a slant, but it also meant that it was the last row. And you could get away from that grinding work. So that's what the film is called, and that's what that part of the project had been called. There were a number of our educators when it was shown at Rice University, and we had a panel afterwards with the cinematographer and ourselves and 2 African-American women from Grimes County, Grimes County had a very violent racial history. Probably, if you took 3 areas of Texas which had particularly violent racial histories, Wharton, Fort Bend, and Grimes. And all those counties were also very involved in many of the grassroots political movements that came up between the end of Reconstruction in 1875 and 1900 that were extremely important and often very misunderstood. So in Grimes County, the Black Farmers Alliance united with the Populist Party, which was predominantly white. They were all struggling to get away from the dependence on gold to be able to get more economic resources. And it was a 10-year period where whites and Blacks really worked very, very closely together. And it ended in Grimes County with a shootout where they tried, white men, and one of them was the great-grandfather of James Baker, who was a big landowner in the county, tried to shoot the sheriff, who was a populist, and had 2 Black deputies. And anyway, long story. So during the panel, there were several educators that said, why isn't anything like this ever shown in schools? And several teachers came up to us afterwards and said, would we be willing to work on a curriculum? So long and short of it is, I was able to raise some money, and we did research. It's going to have its own website, which is 90% done. And there's a curriculum essentially about race relations and race history in the United States, with a strong emphasis on how we have failed as a society to, as you all know, carry out our founding values. And we relate, there are a lot of exercises and activities in the curriculum that are asking students to not only become active and engage in the society in which they live, but also their own lives to some of the experiences that Black Americans have had. There's one class, for example, on the omission of Black Americans in the US history books. And they work on their own experiences about what it feels to be left out and forgotten. The curriculum is, when it's finished, it's going to be free. I had asked Omawale to be one of the evaluators. There are several evaluators, predominantly teachers and some activists that have looked at it now. It will be piloted in the spring. It will be a free and open curriculum when it's finally finished. So that's what I'm working on. And I think it is a very, very groundbreaking approach to the subject matter. And there are classes on the US Constitution that are, not didactic academic classes, but the way in which students' lives are affected by the Constitution, and how fragile democracy is, that it's a very complex system of government, but at the same time, it's very fragile. It's what we're seeing right now, actually. And if there is not a reciprocity of trust between the citizenship and the governing people, that it breaks down very easily. And you can see that, the most extreme part is, of course, Black American history, but you see it in Mexican history, you see it even in German history. Germans had rejected slavery. They became basically a free collection of counties in Texas. And as a result, actually 400 young men were massacred. So this is white against white. So it exists across the board. And the problem is, I think maybe it was Angela, I was thinking, somebody in this group who taught at East Texas Community College with students that never had heard of the Constitution, had no sense of civics. So if we don't have a citizenry that understands our role, then it's very hard to control the government that we are in. So that's what I'm working on. Do you have any? You've read it, so.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you what. I'm stunned at the insight, the brilliance of Fred and Wendy for producing this effort. And by the way, Grimes County, just to make sure that it rings with you, that's Navasota.
Yeah.
So I think all of you know Navasota and that area. Does the Brazos River run through Grimes County?
Yes, it runs through the whole east side of Grimes County. So both the Navasota and Brazos River have created this incredibly rich bottomland, which were some of the biggest plantations in Texas. And there was one very famous blues song that man slips. One was Big Boss Man and the other was Tom Moore's farm. And that farm is still there, that plantation, no longer called a plantation, but farm is there and it's still in the hands of the Moore family. The younger generation is quite different from the old one, but Tom Moore was one of those extremely cruel. He was one of three brothers, farmers, and he used a lot of penitentiary labor as well.
Right. Well, Wendy, let me mention that to get a stamp of approval for using, employing this curriculum, it had to meet certain standards of Common Core and also the Texas Assessment of Basic Skills. And so that was a novel leap in itself to be able to do that with the kind of aplomb to meet those guidelines. And so when we, kudos to you and Fred and all of the people that cooperated with you all. And I'm sure that we'll have some feedback once it's in the public domain.
Yes, well, it could be before that. And frankly, this is the first stage of evaluation, and we wanted to have that before the pilot teachers started it, both in HISD and the surrounding school districts. But there are several people who have spoken in meetings here who I thought would be very good to take a look at it in the second go around. So
thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah, does anybody have any observations or comments? Yes, sir, Mr. Johnson.
I was just going to ask Wendy, how does this curriculum jive with the new history book that was approved about 2 years ago by the Texas Education Agency, which is, indicating that Moses, the country was founded on the laws of Moses.
Right.
All of that.
It's very different from that.
No, but I mean, is it going to be incorporated? Because what's supposed to come into play next year is again a whitewashed version of his story.
Right. Well, I'm at a point. I'm not a teacher. I'm not somebody in the education system. I relied on particularly a biracial group of 3 teachers, who we, worked on this together. And I have relied partly on them for the sort of bureaucratic and institutional systems. I know because PhotoFest has, which is the organization that Fred and I co-founded here, it's an arts organization, an international arts organization. We have an education program called Literacy Through Photography. It's in a lot of the district's Houston area schools. I know how important the TEKS are. So we have made every single lesson coordinate with both the National Common Core standards and the TEKS. And the teachers really did that. And the evaluators so far have said that it's a really excellent coordination. We decided to go the route of an independent website, partly because teachers do have some freedom to use their own curriculum, what they find, as long as it can be coordinated in Texas with the TEKS. So I think for the first year or so, we're going to exist outside the core TEA education system, and by word of mouth, we will promote it, but teachers will find their way to it independently.
Yeah. And Johnson, we'll be having some communication going forward, and some of it, I guess Wendy or some surrogate that she appoints. So again, kudos to the effort and all of those wonderful people that you work for in Grimes County. And at some point, we'd like to hear about these other frontiers other than the southern frontier that you and Fred work. That's going to prove interesting to us too.
Yes.
All right.
People ask me what we learned after all that time, and we say at the end of the film. the fragility of our democracy.
Yes.
And that's what I really hope young people will take out of this experience, aside from learning more about how rich, I mean, it's not all doomsday. There are some wonderful photographs of life, of Black life in the county and so forth. And so, and the resource list, which we are working on, will be very, very rich.
Thank you. Yes, it is very rich. Let me ask you one question, Wendy. How many years was it in years that you and Fred underwent this project?
About 10 years.
And so you were traveling between these frontiers for 10 years.
Yeah, but we would stay in when we were working in the Grimes County area, the old corn and cotton frontier. We really stayed there for probably 2 years, and then would come back on and off. And we still have maintained contact. And a number of the younger generation actually live now in Houston. And in the German Hill Country, we stayed a year and a half solidly, actually. And that book has been published. We've never finished the Grimes County book yet. So, and then along the border, a year between Southeast Texas and Southwest Texas.
Yeah. Well, this is going to prove to be enduring because I know Angela, Charlotte, and many of us on this call, we have not necessarily teaching instructional experience, but we have a school-based experience. So this is going to be very, very interesting as things begin to go forward.
Right. And it does bring in current affairs. I mean, there was a wonderful video that young men put together for us that goes from the march in Selma and the letter from the Birmingham jail to George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, and so forth. So current events are very much a part of it as well.
Wonderful, wonderful. Yeah, again, kudos to you. Well, look, we're going to...
Thank you all for listening.
No, we're very happy to
work. That's amazing. I'm so intrigued by what you've just shared. Thank you very much.
Well, please feel free to let me know. And I probably will ask you for your help. I was thinking of Sherra, who would be very good to look at the whole curriculum. I know. Angela, did you teach in East Texas? Were you?
No, I'm not a teacher, but I've worked in schools and school administration for several years. Mm-hmm.
Oh,
Angela, was your mom a teacher?
Ask your advice.
I was asking Angela, was your mom a teacher?
My dad.
Your dad? Okay, good then. Yeah. Well, look, people. We're going to go ahead and conclude unless somebody wants to has anything pressing that we might have overlooked. But Ms. Brantley is going to send us, and I always say kudos to Ms. Brantley. Ms. Brantley is going to send us a link for Wednesday at 12 noon.
Okay.
So if any of you all get a call from me at 2 a.m. or 3 a.m. on the 3rd, I'm assuming that you're up. Okay.
Okay.
You can talk.
I'll be up, brother.
Okay.
We'll all be up, I believe.
Yeah.
We're gonna all be up.
Yeah, my friend texted me when Romney ran against Obama, and she said, why don't that fool concede so we can go to sleep? Okay, well, look, I want to say good day. I'm gonna let you check out first, Ms. Brantley, with whatever you have.
Just go vote.
Charlotte.
Freedom is like charity. It starts at home.
Right.
Right.
Miss Angela Carter.
I'm gonna go all the way back. More power to the people.
love it.
That brings back memories.
It does,
Yes,
doesn't it?
definitely. Sherra?
I just wanted to thank Wendy. I was just blown away by the work that you've done and the innovative approach, to reach kids. And I would be honored to do anything I can to, to assist and to learn more, because I'm from East Texas, so it really resonates with me.
Yeah, well, thank you. That's lovely to hear. I'll consult you, don't worry.
Please do.
Yes, I will.
Miss Arthur?
Coach.
Okay. Mr. Johnson, Reverend Johnson.
If you committed a crime under the 93 and 94 crime bill, do not blame Joe Biden.
Blame Biden.
Hey, Johnson, I see you feel strongly about that. We're going to have to talk.
I mean, hey, it's like I can't remember his name, the old television guy. If you do the crime, you got to do the time.
Yep.
Joe Biden wasn't
That's
holding
right.
it under your head when you did what you did. So I'm done.
Okay. Miss Claire, do you have a closing comment?
Well, I'm still with Keep Hope Alive.
Okay, wonderful.
Amen.
Yeah, my comment is I'm gonna plagiarize somebody else. Got to give more power to the people. Okay. Hey, look, and now we need Sly and the Family Stone and Bootsy Collins and all of those people to follow up on that beat behind. Got to give more power to the people. Okay, well, look, folks, it's been wonderful, and we'll be together Wednesday at noon. Thank you.
Thank you.
Everybody have a good 3 days.
Thank you.
Everybody be well.
Thank you.
All right.
Put you on the call.
Let's hope we win.
Oh, yes.